This bin is empty, and today we are going to refill it. It's my emergency meals bin. It normally sits at the bottom of my pantry, and it contains non-perishable items that we can use to make meals when all we have is a heat source. There are 3 very good reasons why that bin is empty, which I will share with you, but for now we're gonna get out the door and head to the grocery store so we can get some things to fill it up with again, and I will share with you how I do that, what I make with the things that I put inside it, and hopefully give you some ideas. I have been making videos around this concept for a few years now. I was originally inspired to make the first one after we had an historic ice storm hit Tulsa that knocked the power out for several days for a lot of people. It did not affect our house for very long, but it did get me thinking. You know, we have a gas grill, we have a gas stove that we can light manually, but I couldn't depend on electricity and maybe couldn't rely upon refrigeration, so I couldn't use refrigerated goods or things from my freezer. So how would I make meals for my family using only non-perishable items? So to give you an example of what I'm talking about, let me show you my very favorite meal I've ever come up with around this concept. I went back into the vault to get this chicken noodle soup recipe to show you guys. I usually use a recipe from Paula Deen called the Ladies Chicken Noodle Soup whenever I am making homemade chicken noodle soup. So I was trying to kind of model this recipe after that recipe, but using only shelf-stable ingredients. So these are the ingredients I use to make it, plus some water. I have a bag of egg noodles, a can of chicken breast, a can of sliced carrots. I'm going to use 1 bouillon cube, a packet of Italian dressing mix, and the secret ingredient that I decided to add just to give it a little bit of a creamy texture is a can of table cream, and I find that in the Hispanic food section in my grocery store. I also considered whether or not I wanted to use gnocchi instead of egg noodles because gnocchi is shelf stable in these vacuum sealed packages for a little while, but I just went with the egg noodles in the end. So I'm just combining my canned chicken, my can of sliced carrots, 1 of my bouillon cubes, also my packet of seasoning mix, and I used about 8 to 10 cups of water, and I actually came back and added a little more water later on, which you'll see in a minute. I decided to go with packet seasonings for this because I just thought it would be easier to store, and when I look at the back of the seasoning packets, a lot of these seasonings are things I would use in my regular chicken noodle soup recipe. I also thought using a seasoning packet instead of relying on my own seasonings would make it possible for me to maybe share these with a friend if necessary, because you'll see how I'm storing them later. I went ahead and brought my broth mixture to a boil. I added my noodles to it, and that's when I realized that I needed more water. Now here is my table cream, and table cream is not condensed sweetened milk. It is basically kind of like evaporated milk, except half and half instead of milk. I mean, it's basically canned half and half. It's got a little higher fat content than evaporated milk. And since I'm using mostly low fat or no fat ingredients in this, I just really wanted that kind of creamy texture to this chicken noodle soup, and I knew that the fat in the table cream would add like some flavor and also make the chicken noodle soup a little more satisfying. So after my noodles were done cooking in the chicken and the broth mixture, I just stirred in my table cream, and this is what it looked like. It smelled fantastic. It tasted fantastic. It was so good. Another option you could add to this is a little bit of Parmesan cheese. When I make the ladies chicken noodle soup, it calls for grated Parmesan cheese. And in the canister, if it's unopened, you can actually store this in the pantry for a little while. Of course, after the canister's open, it has to go in the fridge. So another option might be some of these Parmesan packets that I almost always have lying around from like pizza or takeout places. So I threw a couple of those in the bag too, so I could sprinkle a little bit of that on my soup if I thought it needed it. But this turned out really great. I'm very glad that I added the table cream to it. You could leave that out if you wanted, you don't need it, but it just gave it this like really rich, satisfying flavor. And like I said, I ate this for several days. I was sick at the time that I made it, and it just really hit the spot. It was so good. I was really pleased with how this turned out. So it's time for me to kind of refill and reorganize my bin. Number one, because I try to do this once a year around this time of year. Winter will be upon us in a few months, so it's just a good time for me to kind of refresh everything that's in that bin. Secondly, we actually try to rotate all of the items out of the bin eventually, meaning we use them throughout the year, even in a non-emergency situation. And so a lot of the things that I had in my bin that I actually refilled, I think last February, so it's not quite been a year, but a lot of them have been used, and we've kind of depleted a lot of the things that I had set aside the last time I did this. And the third reason which really made this task urgent is something I discovered a few days ago, and that is that we have mice. mice. Mice got into the bin. I definitely saw the evidence that they were getting into things in the emergency bin. We set the traps. We called the pest control people. It's a problem we deal with every now and then because we have a big backyard with water features, and when the weather shifts, the mice come inside the house and we have to get rid of them. Ugh. But all that's to say, I had to get rid of almost everything in the bin because they can chew through paper, they can chew through boxes, they can even sometimes compromise things that are in plastic. Basically anything that was not in a sealed aluminum can, I had to get rid of and then disinfect the bin to refill it. So that's what I did, and I'm at Walmart now, and we're gonna go inside and get some things, and I'll show you exactly what I'm putting in my bin and how I intend to use it. It's October, so you know what that means, right? Over the years, lots of other really great uses for these meals from non-perishable ingredients have been mentioned by you guys. Several of you have said they're great for campers, for people who are traveling in RVs. If you are traveling by car to like an Airbnb or a rental, they're easy to pack up and take with you because you don't have to worry about refrigerating them, and you don't have to worry about making it to a grocery store really soon once you get to your vacation spot. But the primary purpose, at least for me, for these emergency meals is to have something that would get us through in a temporary, semi-urgent, minor emergency situation, because you just never know what's going to happen. You got to plan for the unforeseen, right? It's not really a thing any of us like to think about, but especially if we have families, we just have to be prepared, which is why today's sponsor is absolutely perfect for this video, because it's Fabric by Gerber Life. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done right here, right now. You could be covered right from your own couch or your car in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. One of the things my husband and I have discovered over the years is that sometimes it takes more than one policy to really secure our family's future. And even if we have life insurance through our employers, sometimes it's not enough. Or sometimes it doesn't follow us if we happen to leave that job or no longer work there. Fabric has lots of flexible, high quality term life insurance policies that can fit your family's needs and your budget, like $1 million of coverage for less than $1 a day. And it's all done online. So when you're ready, you can apply when it's convenient for you, and there's no risk because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee and you can cancel anytime. Plus, Fabric offers other things for securing your family's future, like free digital wills and investment accounts for your kids, and you can manage it all right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/cmindymom. Again, that's meetfabric.com/cmindymom, MEET fabric.com/cmindymom. And thank you again to Fabric for sponsoring today's video. I usually try to fill my bin with 4 complete meals for my family, plus some other items, which we'll talk about in a minute. But let me tell you the meals that I'm packing in the bin first. Last year, I discovered cooked ground beef in a can, like canned cooked ground beef. And I was a little leery of that at first, but I tried it out in one of these non-perishable ingredient recipes in the last video I made on this topic, and it actually turned out pretty great. In fact, several of you left me comments on that video that that is a really great product, that sometimes it can be hard to find and I should stock up on it. So I was really excited this time out to include my dad's taco soup recipe in my emergency meals bin because the only perishable ingredient in it is ground beef. Well, unfortunately, at my Walmart today, they did not have any of that ground beef available. I did check online before I went, and a few days ago it was available, so maybe in a few more days it'll be back in stock. But for now, I am just going to throw a can of chicken in with the other ingredients for this recipe, and if I come up with the ground beef later on, I can swap it out. But in addition to the ground beef, or in my case right now, the canned chicken, it also calls for 1 can of navy beans, 1 can of Great Northern beans, 1 can of Rotel, 1 can of shoe peg corn, and this is little bitty corn. It's very small corn. I find it in the Green Giant brand in the grocery store, and it's also slightly sweetened, I believe. And 1 can of hominy, and if I don't find this in the regular canned vegetable aisle at my Walmart, I can sometimes find it in the aisle that has some of the Hispanic brands. And then 1 packet of taco seasoning, 1 packet of ranch seasoning. You just put all of that together in a big pot with 4 cups of chicken broth and bring it to a simmer for about 25 to 30 minutes and it's ready to serve. And I chose to go ahead and buy the chicken broth already made up, but if you know that you're gonna be in a place where you have water, you could just throw in a couple of bouillon cubes. Now, we usually serve this with tortilla chips, and in the salad aisle in the grocery store where they have, you know, all the salad dressings, they also usually sell salad toppings, including small bags of tortilla strips like this, which are perfect to go along with this soup and will store very easily with the other ingredients. I wanted one meal that was just super duper easy, so I picked up a couple of boxes of this tuna tetrazzini. Now, you could also use canned chicken with this. In fact, I almost did that, but I went ahead and picked up the canned tuna since I was gonna use the canned chicken for the taco soup now. For the liquids to cook the double batch of tuna helper, I got 1 quart or 4 cups of chicken broth. And then there are so many options for shelf-stable milks now, but I went ahead and picked up just 1 12-ounce can of evaporated milk. And since this is concentrated to double the strength of regular milk, I would just need to add a can's worth of water to what's in here. That would give me 24 ounces or the equivalent of 3 cups of milk. And then on the back of the box, it gives some add-in suggestions. So it suggests adding some peas and carrots at the end. My family doesn't care for peas, so I'm just gonna throw in a can of carrots. And then it also says to top it with shoestring potatoes, which I found in the same aisle with the canned vegetables. They look like this. I would have never thought of that, but thank you so much for the suggestion, Tuna Helper Box. I think I will take you up on that. I had in mind a Frito chili pie type meal using 1 can of no bean chili, 1 can of chili beans, 1 can of chili ready tomatoes, maybe half a cup of water or broth, and maybe a little bit of jar queso. I also picked up some rice, and I got the rice that's like already cooked in the bag that you just have to reheat. And man, they have so many options now where that's concerned as well. I ended up going for a little pricier version that was cooked in bone broth because it'll add a little extra protein to the meal. Where I ran into a little hiccup with this meal was with the Fritos, because the corn chips at my Walmart all seemed a little bit short dated. The date was only a few months out. And even though I know best by date doesn't always mean expiration date, chips can go rancid. So I was gonna take a chance and just make sure that I use that meal sometime in the next 3 or 4 months. But when I walked into Dollar Tree for something else, which you'll see in a minute, I saw this brand of corn chips, and they have a little longer date, a little longer best by date on them. So I went ahead and picked up a couple of small bags of these, which will pack really easily with that meal. This next recipe would work with egg noodles, but if you're tired of pasta or you just want to think outside the box a little bit, it works with gnocchi. Gnocchi is one of those shelf-stable ingredients. You might find it where the pastas are. It's a little potato dumpling, and it's in a vacuum sealed package, so it stores really easily. And I found this recipe of all places on the Heinz website, so I will leave the original linked in the description box below. But when I started looking at it, I realized that I wasn't gonna have to make too many substitutions in order to make it shelf stable. Basically, I'm not gonna be able to use the mirepoix at the beginning, the carrots, onions, and celery that are sauteed in butter, but I can substitute the half and half that's called for in the recipe with a little bit of table cream. It calls for, again, other shelf-stable ingredients like the chicken gravy that you can buy in a jar. I'll use canned chicken instead of the rotisserie chicken that it calls for. There are even lots of options where Parmesan cheese is concerned. It doesn't have to be just the green shaky can. I found some shredded parm in a jar that doesn't have the anti-caking agent, so I picked up some of that for this recipe as well. For the vegetables for this chicken pot pie gnocchi recipe, I went with a can of mixed vegetable medley. Now, there are 2 different kinds of canned mixed vegetables in my grocery store. There's just the mixed vegetables, and then there's the mixed vegetable medley. And that one has celery and potatoes in addition to some of the other recipes, so I thought it would be a little bit closer to what would be in a chicken pot pie. Canned soup is something that we often have on hand in the pantry anyway, that is a great non-perishable heat and eat meal. And one thing that I am throwing in my bin for a breakfast option is some oatmeal. And I have seen these Quaker protein enriched oatmeals in my grocery store that have a few different flavors. I picked up the apple cinnamon and the cranberry almond, and these have 12 grams of protein per packet. And you can make them with water, or you could buy a few cartons of shelf-stable milk to throw in there. You could even throw in some raisins or some nuts or something like that to kind of jazz it up for an easy heat and eat breakfast that would not require very much work and that will store super easily. The other thing that I like to do is get a few items that I can pack pack into little individual, like quart-sized baggies that make grab-and-go individual meals. Things like pretzels and peanut butter, granola bars, applesauce, raisins, beef jerky, and I divide these up into little mini meals. And these are handy, not just in an emergency situation, although I guess you can call this next situation an emergency, but my kids will sometimes grab those to take for lunch if they have gotten out of bed late and they don't have time to pack one, or maybe something happened and we're just, you know, late getting out the door, or we don't have as much on hand for them to pack a lunch. But those have come in really handy for like emergency lunches, or for grabbing and going to like the ballpark if we've got a long day, or a morning swim meet if they haven't packed all of their snacks. So I try to fill up another bin with grab and go, ready to eat, don't require any heat or any cooking at all type food. I do have a free printable for you. It's in the description box below with 3 of the recipes that I packed in my bin today. And last year I also put out a little mini ebook that included some of the instructions that I've shared on storage, and then 10 recipes, including the chicken noodle soup and the Frito chili pies that I talked about in today's video. So I will leave a link to that ebook as well if you're interested in purchasing it. Thank you again to Fabric by Gerber Life for sponsoring today's video. They are linked in the description box below. I will also leave links to my other videos where I've talked about this topic, so you can watch one of those next, or pick out one of these videos, and I'll see you there.